Breaking news now. Putin uses the ruble and the vote to shore up his shaky authority. The war in Ukraine has now gone on for 18 months with no end in sight, the ruble is plummeting, and the shock of a failed mutiny has not yet worn off. Despite rising anxiety among high-ranking officials and business tycoons about the future, 4 sources close to the Kremlin say that preparations are already underway for Vladimir Putin to secure a 5th term in office in the March 2024 elections. One of the people, and a second close person, said that the Bank of Russia's emergency rate hike this week was not just in response to the ruble's latest fall, but rather, was part of a broader effort to contain inflation ahead of the vote. Perhaps the election was not taken into account, and action was delayed until the next regularly scheduled meeting of the central bank's Monetary Policy Committee. To prevent further erosion of real household income, it is under open pressure from Putin's aides to stabilize the exchange rate. Additionally, one of the people said, the government is working on a 3-year budget plan that will provide pre-election sweeteners, including additional stimulus that could add to inflation. According to Bloomberg Economics Russia economist Alexander Isakov, domestic political considerations are calling for tighter monetary policy. As the author puts it, had the ruble continued to depreciate, it would have pushed inflation up by 1 to 1.5 percentage points, with price growth peaking at just the wrong time, ahead of the March elections. Ruble Putin's absolute rule in Russia is under historic attack. Putin's war chances are hurt by Russia's elite. Putin's authority as a guarantor of stability has taken a major blow in the wake of the mutiny by Wagner mercenary group leader Yevgeny Prigozhin, who acted as a military contractor for the state in Ukraine and elsewhere. The Kremlin hopes to use the election to portray Putin as a popular and competent leader, both at home and in his confrontation with the United States and its NATO allies. Putin's absence from this month's BRICS Leaders Summit is indicative of the depth of his international isolation, as many countries have refused to join the United States, the European Union, and their allies in imposing sanctions over Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It is risky for the Russian leader to visit even friendly countries like South Africa due to an arrest warrant from the International Criminal Court. For countries that once saw Moscow as a balance to U.S. power, Putin is becoming an increasingly risky investment. His weak reaction to the mutiny and his failure to punish Prigozhin left many in the elite puzzled and alarmed about the possibility of high-level fighting or further challenges. Russia's military failures haven't been forgotten by the security establishment. Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu and Chief of General Staff Valery Gerasimov remain in their positions despite Prigozhin's attempt to oust them, which, according to 2 people with knowledge of the matter, had some support from key state security agencies. According to 5 people with knowledge of the situation, security hardliners want to replace Shoigu in order to shift to a more aggressive prosecution of the war, which includes full mobilization and martial law. The Russian general Sergei Surovikin, who was questioned about the failed mutiny, has not been seen since, and there is no indication that he will be removed from his position. Igor Girkin's detention last month, after he lashed out at Putin, highlighted those tensions. Girkin is a prominent former Russian intelligence officer. Girkin claims to have led Moscow-backed insurgents in Ukraine's eastern Donbass region at the start of the conflict. He was convicted in absentia by a Dutch court for the deadly attack on a Malaysia Airlines flight in 2014. He warned Putin's nearly 840,000 subscribers on Telegram that Russia will not survive another 6 years of power from this useless coward. That power is transferred to someone who is truly capable and responsible, is something the president must ensure. The repercussions of the mutiny are still being felt at the highest levels of Russian society, so the Kremlin has taken measures to better counter future threats to Putin's authority. The president can now direct governors to form specialized militias to combat illegal armed groups thanks to legislation passed by the State Duma. The Russian National Guard is led by Putin's former bodyguard Viktor Zolotov, and the lower house passed a bill last month to supply them with heavy weapons. If Putin, now 70 years old, remains in the Kremlin until 2030, he will have outlasted even the Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin. After amending the constitution to give himself 2 more terms, he could stay until 2036. Regional elections in Russia will kick off a campaign on September 10 that officials hope will restore Putin's authority and silence critics who question his continued leadership. Putin does not feel weakened. He is convinced that he is at the peak of his strength. He is sure of himself. He is optimistic. He is even euphoric, says Tatiana Stanovaya, founder of consulting firm R-Politik. No one, not even those closest to Putin, can question his decision to run for office. Putin's support among ordinary Russians continues to soar, despite growing skepticism among the country's elites. On the day of the mutiny, the percentage of people who thought the country was headed in the wrong direction peaked at 30%, according to a survey conducted by the independent Levada Center in Moscow on July 26. However, that number quickly dropped back down to the 23% monthly average seen in recent polls. Putin's overall approval rating was 82%, the study found.